is down. Referee Dave Barry motions Dempsey to a neutral corner. Now let's take a closer look at all the action in slow motion. This is the historic long count. Dempsey lashes out like the old Manasseh Mauler. Tunney hits the canvas. The official knockdown timekeeper at ringside starts the count. But referee Dave Barry ignores him, and instead he tries to make Dempsey understand that he will not start the count until Dempsey goes to the farthest neutral corner. That's the Illinois boxing rule. Dempsey finally obeys, and then Barry starts the count. The Dempsey fans here at ringside are furious. They're claiming that Tunney was down 4 seconds before the count was started. But the Tunney fans say the count has nothing to do with it. Tunney can get up any time. He's watching the referee and listening to the count. He's staying down only because he wants to take full advantage of the count. The Dempsey fans insist more than 10 seconds have elapsed, but Barry's count is still going on. Count is 9, Tunney is up.
All right, there's the newsreel footage. And again, we apologize if you were counting and suddenly slow motion replay. No, I'm counting. All right, explain. Explain now how that came about and why there was that controversy and why, with a fighter going to a neutral corner. That was relatively new, right?
Yes, it was Dempsey's doing. Dempsey was the one who called for that rule. And this is unusual because Dempsey was the type of fighter who would stand over a fallen opponent, as he had over Willard,
get back up, bang, put him back down.
As he had over Firpo, like the avenging angel of death. The minute your gloves are off the floor, boom. So it was Dempsey. But Dempsey in the first fight, the year before, had been so injured around the eyes, he was fearful of his eyes, and he was afraid that Tunney would knock him down, which parenthetically and incidentally, this is in the 7th round, the 8th round, Tunney does knock him down. The referee, Dave Barry, was installed that afternoon of the fight. There was a rumor of chicanery. Al Capone had a lot of money that afternoon put in on Dempsey and had his own referee. And he was replaced that afternoon by Dave Barry. And there were all kinds of rumors. That's why this, all these years later, is still a controversy.
Right. But now Tunney is looking up at Barry at that point.
But
you think
14 seconds.
You've probably watched it for many, many times.
14 seconds.
But could he have gotten back up if he picked up the count and said, 6, 7? Could he have gotten back up?
Tunney said he could have. That was good enough for me because Tunney knew where he was at all times. Though he did say later that being on the floor is the loneliest feeling in the world. He's down. He says, I picked up the count at about 3. And then he's staring at the referee.
Right.
Now, if it was 14 seconds by some people's clock, and he picks up the count at 3, that means he's picked it up at 7, even though Barry is trying to shoo Dempsey over to the neutral corner, so he still could have gotten up.
Right.
There's no doubt 4 seconds helped him to clear his head more.
Sure.
But he now gets on his horse, and he knows exactly what to do. And Jack Dempsey, and this is Dempsey's last fight, by the by, is an old man. He's trying to catch him again, and it was that lethal left hook that did it, and he can't catch him.
Right.
He just cannot catch him. But the controversy still goes on. The irony is Tunney wins, and Dempsey comes out of this the hero. People adopted Dempsey, and Dempsey said later, all people remember is the long count. It made me a lot of money. I like money.
And only one title defense after that for Gene Tunney, and then he would retire.
He retires.
Yeah.
Tunney got a check from Tex Rickard. There were 120-some thousand packed in. Official 100,000. 120 were in Soldier Field that day, or that night. And you wonder what they saw from the outer reaches. Tunney gets a check from Tex Rickard, the promoter, for $990,000. He gives it back to him, writes his own check for $10,000, and says, I want a check for $1 million. And that check is still the photostat.
Yeah. Cash the check.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Right. Is on the garage wall of his son up in Connecticut.
Back here at Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn, it's ringside, the top 10 heavyweights of all time. The countdown continues. Brian Kenny and Burt Randolph Sugar. We are at number 4, and number 4 on Burt's list is Jack Johnson. Why Jack Johnson this high, Bert?
Jack Johnson was brilliant. In fact, there were some like Nat Fleischer, the former publisher of Ring Magazine, thought he was the greatest fighter of all time. Tom Sharkey, who fought twice for the heavyweight championship at the turn of the last century, said he was great. He was the greatest I ever saw, and I say that honestly because I hated the man. So he was viewed as one of the greats. He was a great defensive fighter. He could put up his hands, catch anything, elbows, hands, cat-like moves, and at 6'1", when the average size of the American male was 5'9½", was enormous. Mm-hmm. He could do everything. In fact, it was said that he shaved his head so he could butt people, just in case nothing else was working. Now, go to Tommy Burns, who didn't want to fight him. They pulled what they call the color line, 5'8". So you can see it almost looks like the 1939 World's Fair, the disparity.
Right.
And Jack Johnson, who had beaten everybody in the what they call Black Murderers Row, Denver, Ed Martin, he'd beaten Sam Langford, Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette, but he couldn't get a fight against whites. He chased Tommy Burns all the way to Australia, where on the day after Christmas, 1908, he gets him in the ring. And according to the referee, H.D. McIntosh, which stood for Huge Deal McIntosh, and he was the promoter. Mm-hmm. That's how that worked in those days. Jack Johnson in the first clinch fouled Tommy Burns badly. Split his lip. It was hanging from his lip.
Fouled him how? What, elbow?
On the break.
Just grappling off the
break. On the break,
okay.
He hit him. And at that point, knocked down Burns 3 times before the 14th round, at which point McIntosh, not knowing what to do, didn't stop the fight. The constabulary of Sydney, Australia, jumped in the ring to stop the fight. Mm-hmm. And they cut off the cameras.
The police shut off the cameras and stopped the fight.